Today's story is about bank robberies, but unlike any you've heard before. Two smart and dangerous partners, driven by their heists and escapes, came up with a robbery method that landed them on America's top 10 most wanted list. But what's crazier than their robbery style is how they managed to escape the investigators. A getaway so slick it made the FBI scratch their heads. I'm bringing you the story fresh from Mars. So grab something light to snack on and enjoy. On December 28, 1982, Steve Thompson, the manager of a bank in Oklahoma, arrived home with his wife, Eileen, after their vacation. After they got inside, the security guard. Suddenly, another car pulled up behind them and two guys got out. They said, "Mr. Steve, we're FBI agents." The couple was surprised and thought these guys were confused about the address. Feline asked one of them, "Can I see your ID?" This guy was wearing a wig and sunglasses, holding a gun. That's when the couple realized something was seriously wrong. It was obvious the guy with the wig was the shooter, and the other guy giving orders was the leader. There was a third man in their car, but he stayed in the garage and shut the door. The thieves took the couple inside, sat down with them, and even started drinking coffee together. It was surprisingly chill. Then things started to change. The leader was questioning Steve about how the bank works and the security system. Steve was cooperative with everything because the safety of the employees was the most important thing. The plan was to keep her held until the next morning, then start the operation. The leader warned Steve, telling him if any of them tried to trigger the alarms, he would kill them and the police. He also said, "I don't want to go back to prison again." Steve replied, "All right." The next day, just an hour before dawn, the thieves got into Steve's car, took him and his family, and headed to the bank. At 9 a.m., Steve opened the bank, disabled the alarm system, and waited for the employees to arrive. The thieves' target was the person in charge of the bank's vault. They waited for him to arrive, open the vault, then they'd steal the money and make their escape. The gang leader was in contact with a third thief who was across the bank, watching the people coming in and giving him details about them. For example, he'd say, "A woman in a black dress with floral prints is about to enter." The leader would ask Steve about the woman's job and if she'd be useful for them to get into the vault. After they got inside, Steve greeted them and told them to follow the plan and that everything was on track. The guy nicknamed the executor then took them and locked them up in the bank's bathroom. And when they arrived, the guy in charge of the safe was taken by the robbers at gunpoint to the safe. They gave him a bag and told him to fill it with money. They managed to steal hundreds of thousands from the safe. After the plan worked, they locked up the safe manager and Steve with the other employees in the bank's bathroom. They told them they'd stay in the bank for 5 minutes, then leave. But as soon as they left, they jumped in their car and fled the scene. When the employees got out, they called the police and reported that the Oklahoma bank had been robbed. When the police arrived, they handed the case over to the FBI. During the investigation, Steve, the bank manager, told them everything that had happened. The day before, the FBI realized this was a precise and complex operation, very well planned, and the thieves didn't leave any evidence behind. After reviewing files on past bank heists, they found out that two thief partners, Terry Connor and Joseph Degree, used to pull off similar jobs. Their method was spot on. They'd kidnap the managers and rob the bank. Witness descriptions matched these two guys, and investigators learned that Terry and Joseph had been locked up together a while back in a federal prison. Terry was charged with carrying out 3 heists. The banks where the leader, Joseph, was involved were targets of serious robbery and theft operations. They got out of prison a few years before the heist we talked about. That means they had 2 suspects, but so far, there's no clear evidence against them. Later, they found out that Terry had a friend living in California. Once they located her house, a surveillance team went to check things out from a distance. At that time, there was a car parked in front of her house with an Oklahoma license plate, and they were sure it was Terry's car. But when they ran the information, it turned out differently than expected. Bana bought it under a fake name, and at the time, he spotted a farmer working at Terry's friend's house. So they went there, introduced themselves, and told him they were investigating a case for the FBI, stressing that he needed to be honest and discreet. They asked if he had seen any men at the house recently. and the guy said he overheard the homeowner talking with her friend about meeting up next week for a wedding. They kept watching the house for days until Terry's friend showed up. Right after that, they started tracking them by car and helicopter. After following them, they ended up at a restaurant where she got out. Keep in mind, up to that point, Terry still hadn't been involved at all, and at the same time they had formed. The SWAT team was waiting for the signal to start their operation. One of the team members went down to Terry's friend's car and let the air out of one of the tires to slow them down in case they tried to escape. After 2 hours of surveillance, Terry arrived at the restaurant, got out, and opened his car trunk. It looked like he was going to take some things out and put them in his girlfriend's car. Right then, the SWAT team surrounded him and arrested him without any harm. They took his girlfriend in for questioning but released her afterward since she wasn't involved. What Terry did, opening the trunk, helped them a lot because everything was clear. If they hadn't opened the car trunk, they would have needed a search warrant first. The first thing they noticed was a bag full of cash, over $30,000, all with serial numbers that matched the money stolen from the Oklahoma bank. During the investigation, they told him he was accused of robbing the Oklahoma bank, but he told them, "No, man, you guys must be mistaken." While handing over his stuff, he had a receipt in his wallet from a car dealership in Nevada, with the buyer's name as Russell Anderson, which seemed to be an alias for one of the partners, Terry or Joseph. Unfortunately, this receipt there was an address written for a house in California. When the investigators saw it, they immediately handed it over to the SWAT team. They suspected it was Joseph's partner's place. But when they raided it, they found nothing. Apparently, Joseph found out what happened to his partner and fled. It was clear he had no good intentions and planned to use the robbery method that Captain Terry had taught him. And that's exactly what happened. 8 months after the robbery they carried out, the manager of one of the biggest banks in Phoenix, Arizona, named Parker, came back home with his family. As soon as they entered the house, it was obvious it had been robbed, and suddenly, 2 armed guys showed up and started threatening them. Joseph and another assistant of his. Joseph told him, "We don't want anything from you. We just want to rob the bank an hour before dawn." So Parker and his whole family got in a car, went to the bank, followed the same plan as before, and stole over $270,000. Keep in mind, this was in 1983, so with inflation today, that amount would be way more. After the robbery, news reached the investigators from the first case. After questioning Parker and his family, they were sure Joseph Dugree was the one behind it. 6 months later, in the same city, news came in about another robbery. They hit another bank and did their usual thing, held the manager and his family hostage and robbed the bank. But this time, the violence was worse because there was a bomb in the bank. These crazy guys strapped explosives to one of the bank employees and threatened him before the robbery that if he didn't do what they said, they'd blow him up. After robbing the bank, they locked him in the vault. When the bomb squad arrived, the specialist went in, freed the employee, and disabled the bomb. After checking, it turned out the bomb was fake. Then, as soon as they showed him a picture of Joseph, he said, "That's him, no doubt." After the robbery, a witness told the police there was a white sedan with license plates nearby. Washington was quickly backing away from the bank right after the robbery. After checking out the area and questioning the customers, they found it dumped by the side of the road. When they identified the owner, they questioned him, and he told them he had sold it to someone. When they showed him a picture of Joseph, he said that was the guy and mentioned that Joseph had a pregnant woman with him at the time who seemed to be his girlfriend. The investigators described Joseph as very smart and said he used to switch cars like people change socks. He'd sell cars, then buy them back, and sell them again to their original owners. He was causing a lot of confusion and trouble. The problem was that all his business was under fake names, but after a while ago, they found a report about a traffic accident that mentioned one of the fake names Joseph used. The report had a home address on it, so they went there and asked one of the neighbors if she knew Joseph. She said he was her neighbor and told them he lived there with his girlfriend and their baby. They moved out a while ago. She also said he had a weird habit of going out to the backyard and shooting guns into the air for no reason or just as a hobby. After they found out the name of Joseph's girlfriend, they learned she had rented a car from a company in the area where they used to live. She went to Colorado, and the rental company gave the FBI all the info about the car's destination. After that, they found out she arrived at a house on a mountain, so they started watching from a distance. Since there was a kid with them, they had to act quietly and carefully. After a while, they saw Joseph's friend leave the house with a stranger, and they got into their car. The team got ready right away, but the leader ordered them not to shoot unless he gave the command. Suddenly, Joseph opened the door holding a magnum pistol and started firing into the woods. The officers remembered what his old neighbor told them, that he used to go out to the yard and shoot all the time. The leader, he told the team that there was no danger to them, to stay calm and not to open fire. After Joseph went inside the house, the FBI called on the landline, picked up and said, "We are the FBI, and you're currently surrounded." But then they hung up immediately. A few minutes later, they called back and said, "We don't want the kid to get hurt. Please surrender." They also said your girlfriend and the guy who was with her have been arrested, then hung up again. So directly, Terry, Joseph, and the two guards were headed to the Oklahoma courthouse. But what happened to them on the way was like something out of a Bollywood movie. At that time, Terry had a razor blade and a key with him. They quietly unlocked the handcuffs while sitting in the back. Joseph grabbed the guard's gun, the one sitting next to the driver, and threatened them not to resist and to follow orders. So, they made them stop on the side of a road in the forest, tied their hands to a tree, jumped back in the car, and took off. Honestly, I have no words for how stupid the guards were. The worst part is that Joseph and Terry are now armed and free, and no one even knows they've escaped. About 15 minutes later, the guards who were tied up managed to free themselves and reported the escape. When the officer in charge heard the news, he was shocked. Imagine years of chasing them all gone in an instant. They worked on the case, but in the end, the suspects got away in the blink of an eye. After escaping, they did their usual thing, carried out 2 small-scale robberies in St. Louis and made off with about $30,000. But that wasn't the big score. Those 2 jobs were just small time compared to Joseph and Terry, because 2 months later, West Allis police got a report about a bank robbery. This time, the hit was huge. They stole over $500,000, which was the biggest robbery ever in Wisconsin. When the FBI got involved and investigated, it turned out Joseph and Terry were behind it because all the details matched up perfectly. The previous heists, they also held the bank manager and his family hostage. Then they robbed the bank. And believe it or not, this time they went in and robbed the bank without disguises like wigs or anything. They even told the bank manager, "Don't worry, the FBI will find out who we are." After that job, the FBI put them on the top 10 wanted list and asked the public for help. After some investigation, they managed to track down the driver who was with them during the heists. Like we said, Terry was the leader, Joseph was the guy who carried out the plan, and there was a third person, the driver, whose identity was unknown. When they found him, they arrested him, but at first, he refused to say anything about Terry and Joseph. But after 5 days of constant pressure, he told them he might cooperate, but only if they reduced his sentence. He also said he would never testify against them in court. They agreed, no problem. Then he started explaining how the 2 partners planned their heists, how they picked the banks they wanted to rob. The most important info he gave was the name of a guy who had helped the partners pull off robberies before. His name was John Harris. The investigators managed to find him in Arizona and started watching him from a distance. One time, they noticed he was making and receiving calls from a payphone, so they bugged it and overheard him talking to Terry and Joseph, and that's how they figured out who they were. The call was that the 2 guys were in touch with them in Chicago and were planning to carry out a robbery there. Right after that, Terry suddenly came out of the hotel, took a few steps, and then the raid team surrounded him and arrested him. But Joseph disappeared from the scene like he was never there. After that, the police went back to wiretap John Har's calls, the guy we mentioned who was helping the 2 suspects. Keep in mind, they still haven't caught him. In one of the calls, Joseph called him and said he was contacting him from St. Louis, but the investigators found out that the incoming call wasn't. Joseph was from St. Louis, actually from the same area where John was in San Francisco. Joseph kept calling John to find out if the FBI was watching him or not. After calling him several times, John thought his friend Joe wasn't being monitored, so he relaxed. Then Joseph called him again and told him they were going to meet the next day, giving him the time and place. Suddenly, at the set time, Joseph showed up and the FBI immediately arrested him, who knows how many times by now. Later, both Timmy Connor and Joseph Degree were sentenced to life in prison plus an additional 139 years without parole, and they were put in federal prisons. She's separated. And as for the other people involved in the story, nothing was mentioned about them. Anyway, that's how the Crazy Partners partnership ended for good. What do you guys think about the verdict? A lot of people said it was too harsh since they didn't actually kill anyone to deserve life imprisonment. Write your thoughts in the comments, and that's it for our story. See you in the next video. Bye.